Picture this. Russia, in the throes of a losing battle against Japan, makes a desperate move. The Tzar decides to send the Baltic fleet on a rescue mission. A voyage of epic proportions lies ahead, a journey made even more daunting by the lack of Russian holdings in Africa or South Asia, where they could refuel. The Baltic fleet, often frozen in port for months on end, is manned by a crew green behind the ears, many not knowing their port from their starboard. The fleet, a motley collection of vessels, some so decrepit they bear the moniker sink-by-themselves squadron, is all they have. This is not merely a voyage from one geographical point to another, but a journey from the familiar to the unknown, from the relative safety of their port to the perilous open sea. Thus begins a journey fraught with peril with a fleet of inexperienced sailors and decaying ships. They set out not just into the open sea, but into a sea of uncertainty and fear. As the Baltic fleet sails further from familiar waters, a sense of paranoia begins to grip the crew. Their hearts heavy with the weight of their mission, their minds clouded with the fear of the unknown. Their voyage, already fraught with logistical nightmares and inexperienced hands, is made all the more treacherous by the specter of the Japanese Navy lurking in their imaginations. Every ripple, every shadow, every fog bank becomes a potential enemy. The sailors are on edge, their nerves frayed to breaking point. The barest whisper of a Japanese cruiser sends them into a frenzy of action. The deafening sound of the ship's klaxon, signaling danger, becomes a common occurrence, each time proving to be nothing more than a phantom threat. The paranoia is a relentless tormentor, gnawing at their sanity, pushing them to the brink of despair. Navigating through the fog of war and their own fears, the fleet nears Britain, little knowing that their worst encounter was yet to come. In the murky waters near Dogger Bank, the fleet encounters a group of innocent fishing trawlers, triggering a catastrophic chain of events. It was a moment frozen in time, a chilling testament to the power of fear and the chaos it can wreak. The Russian Baltic fleet, isolated and vulnerable, was already teetering on the edge of panic. Their nerves were frayed, their senses heightened to a fever pitch. And when the fishing trawlers appeared out of the fog, the fleet's collective imagination transformed these harmless vessels into formidable Japanese torpedo boats. It was a classic case of mistaken identity, and the consequences were devastating. The Russian sailors, their minds clouded by fear and paranoia, sprang into action. Some charged around with cutlasses ready to repel boarders that were never there. Others donned life jackets and lay prone on the deck, ready for the onslaught that never came. But the most tragic response was the one that echoed through the misty air, a barrage of gunfire aimed at the unsuspecting trawlers. The entire fleet opened fire, their cannons lighting up the foggy night with a deadly display of firepower. For 20 long minutes, the Russian fleet bombarded the enemy with all they had. And yet, amidst this chaos and destruction, there was a peculiar twist of irony. One Russian ship, in its frantic attempt to hit the enemy, reportedly fired 500 shells and hit nothing. It was a stark example of the fleet's inexperience and the panic that had gripped them. The aftermath was a grim tableau of destruction. The fleet had managed to sink an innocent British trawler, and in their frenzied firing, had even damaged their own ships. It was a tragic end to a night that began with fear and ended with regret. In a tragic comedy of errors, the fleet had managed to sink a British trawler, damage their own ships, and fire hundreds of shells to no avail. A moment in history that would forever be remembered as the Dogger Bank incident, a testament to the destructive power of fear and paranoia. In the aftermath of the Dogger Bank incident, the Baltic fleet sailed on, leaving behind a trail of destruction and a heightened sense of dread. The cold, hard reality of their actions began to sink in. Their own shadows had become their enemies. Their own fear had turned them into destroyers. They had fired upon innocents, mistaking them for adversaries. What was supposed to be a voyage of assistance had quickly spiraled into a journey of paranoia and chaos. The morale of the crew, already hanging by a thread, was further strained. Doubt seeped into their minds, clouding their judgments and fueling their fears. Would they even make it to their destination? Would they be able to assist in the war effort? Or had they become a liability rather than an asset to their cause? As the haunting echo of their own cannons fades into the distance, one can't help but wonder, was it the fog of war or the fog in their minds that led to this disastrous misfire?